She used to iron his pajamas. She smoothed out every crease by hand, folded them into a neat square, and placed them on the chair beside his bed. Nancy Rooks did that for 10 years inside Graceland, and in all that time she never once told the press what she really saw in that house. But in the final months of her life, Nancy finally shared something she had been carrying since August of 1977. And what she described was not a death. It was a disappearance, one that Elvis Presley, according to her, planned himself. If you had asked anyone in Memphis about Nancy Rooks back in 1967, they would have told you she was a temp worker filling in for a sick housekeeper at some rich family's estate. They had no idea. What started as a one-day placement through an agency turned into something else entirely when Vernon Presley noticed how quietly and carefully she moved through the house. He asked her to stay. She said yes. And for the next decade, Nancy became one of the closest witnesses to Elvis Presley's private world, someone who existed in the background of every room, invisible enough to be trusted, present enough to see everything. She cooked his meals, peanut butter and banana sandwiches at midnight, fried pickles and meatloaf at 2 in the morning. Elvis did not follow anyone's clock, and Nancy adjusted her entire life to match his rhythm. Her shift started around 5 in the evening and ran past midnight, which meant she was awake when no one else was. She would be in the kitchen when Elvis came downstairs barefoot, hair still messy, sometimes wanting to talk, sometimes just wanting peach cobbler in silence. She learned to read his moods the way you learn the weather patterns in a place you have lived your whole life. Not by thinking about it, just by knowing. But Nancy was not just a cook. She was a witness to the parade of people who moved through Graceland. The girlfriends, the bodyguards, the Memphis Mafia, the doctors who came at odd hours carrying black bags and left without saying goodbye. She saw who came and who went, and more importantly, she saw what happened when the crowd left. The quiet hours. The strange phone calls Elvis took alone in the upstairs hallway, pacing the carpet in his socks with the door pulled shut. The books he kept in stacks by his bed, titles on identity, on spiritual transformation, on Eastern philosophy, on what it means to shed one life and begin another. One book in particular caught her eye. It was about a man who faked his own death to escape a life that was suffocating him. She noticed it because Elvis had dog-eared nearly every page. She noticed it the way she noticed everything, silently, without comment. And she filed it away. In the summer of 1977, something inside Graceland shifted. The laughter was thinner. Elvis was heavier, slower on the stairs, and spending longer stretches locked in the upstairs bathroom where no one disturbed him. But Nancy noticed something that did not match the image of a man falling apart. He was making plans, not the kind of plans a dying man makes, the other kind. He had started giving things away, a car to one friend, a piece of jewelry to another, not in a sentimental goodbye kind of way, more like someone cleaning out a closet before moving to a new house. About a week before August 16th, Elvis asked Nancy a question she never forgot. He asked, "You think a person can just start over, just walk away from everything and be somebody new?" She told him sure, if they wanted to badly enough. He smiled at that, half joking, she thought at the time, but only half. There were other details, small things that only someone inside the house would catch. Elvis had been moving money around, large cash withdrawals that Vernon handled personally instead of going through the usual accountants. Vernon Presley, his father and manager, had been making unusual calls from the downstairs office, conversations that stopped the moment anyone walked into the room. And there was one afternoon, maybe 4 days before the 16th, when Nancy walked into the den and found Elvis sitting alone, completely still, staring at a framed photograph of himself on the wall. Not admiring it, studying it, like he was looking at a stranger. Nancy did not pry. That was not her style, but she remembered. And in the weeks after Elvis's death, When the grief settled and the questions started, those memories began to itch. The night before August 16th, Elvis played racquetball at the Graceland court. That detail has been repeated 1,000 times in every documentary and biography. But what those accounts leave out is what Nancy saw when he came back inside. He was sweating, laughing, talking with his bodyguards in the kitchen. He looked tired, sure, but he looked alive. He looked like a man who had energy left to burn. She offered him food the way she always did. He shook his head and asked for water instead. Pauline, another member of the kitchen staff, brought it to him in a plastic jug, the kind with a grip on the side that you would normally use for orange juice. Elvis grabbed it and drank the entire thing without stopping, fast, like a man who had been waiting for it. Nancy brushed it off. He had been playing racquetball. He was hot. It made sense at the time. He went upstairs, and that was the last time Nancy Rooks saw Elvis Presley on his feet. The next morning, Ginger Alden found him unresponsive in the bathroom. Paramedics arrived and the house turned into controlled chaos. Vernon collapsed on the front lawn and staff were crying in the hallways. But Nancy did not cry, not right away. Something felt wrong to her, and it was not the grief. It was the speed. Within hours, plans for a funeral were already in motion. The body was prepared for an open casket viewing at Graceland faster than anyone expected. And when Nancy stood in line with the rest of the household staff to pay her respects, she looked down at the man in the coffin and felt her stomach drop. The nose was different. She had seen that face nearly every day for 10 years, and the nose in the casket was not the same shape. The hands were wrong too, thicker, and the skin had a strange, waxy quality that reminded her more of a department store mannequin than of the man who used to sit at her kitchen table asking for seconds on cornbread. She didn't say anything that day. You don't say something like that at a funeral. You swallow it and walk away and hope you were wrong. But she wasn't the only one who noticed. Over the years, other Graceland staff and attendees at the viewing quietly described the same inconsistencies. The body looked heavier than Elvis had been in recent photographs. The complexion was off. The eyebrows seemed different. Individually, each detail could be explained away. Embalming changes a body. Lighting plays tricks. Grief distorts memory. But taken together, and filtered through the eyes of someone who had folded his pajamas every single night for a decade, the picture looked different. Nancy kept all of this to herself for nearly 45 years. She wrote books about her time at Graceland, warm and careful accounts that gave fans a window into Elvis's daily life. She gave a handful of interviews where she spoke about his kindness, his humor, his love of gospel music late at night. But she kept the hardest details locked away, the things that would sound crazy if you said them out loud, the things that would make people call you a conspiracy theorist instead of a grieving woman who saw something she could not explain. Friends say she would sometimes start to bring it up, then stop herself mid-sentence. Change the subject. Pour another cup of coffee. You could see it sitting behind her eyes, one friend recalled. The weight of it. Then, in her final months, with time pressing in, and most of the others who had been inside that house now gone, Nancy opened the door she had kept shut for decades. In a small recorded conversation, her voice was softer but her memory sharper than anyone expected, and she said it plainly. She said she did not believe Elvis died that day. She believed he left. She described a phone call Elvis made 2 days before August 16th to someone she could not identify. He took it in the hallway upstairs, spoke in a low voice, and when he hung up, he seemed calmer than he had been in weeks, almost peaceful. She told a friend that Vernon's behavior in the hours before the body was found did not match a man experiencing shock. It matched a man who knew what was about to happen. She described the moment at the casket not as confusion, but as confirmation. She said that was not him. She said she knew his face and she knew his hands, and that was not the man she cooked for. Her words did not explode across headlines. There was no press conference, no viral moment. It started as a quiet ripple, shared across Elvis forums and whispered at fan conventions. But among the people who had spent years tracking sightings and inconsistencies in the official timeline, Nancy's testimony landed differently. This was not a stranger speculating from a distance. This was someone who had lived in the house. Someone who had been close enough to smell his cologne and hear his footsteps on the stairs. And she had waited her entire life to say it. Among Elvis scholars and biographers, her statement sparked a quieter reckoning. Some dismissed it as the fading memories of an elderly woman who loved her boss too much to accept he was gone. Others were not so sure. They revisited the details they had glossed over for decades. The suspiciously fast embalming, the sealed toxicology report that took years to surface, the life insurance policy that was never claimed, the 300-pound air conditioning bill for a coffin that was supposedly only open for a few hours. And then there was the gravestone itself. Elvis's middle name was spelled Aaron on the marker, but his birth certificate reads Aaron. Some researchers believe the misspelling was deliberate, a quiet signal left behind for those paying close enough attention. A way of saying the man buried there is not the man you think he is. Individually, none of these details prove anything. But Nancy's testimony gave them a frame. She was not interested in proving a conspiracy. She was telling you what she saw. And what she saw did not look like a man who died. It looked like a man who walked away, left the crown on the bathroom floor, and disappeared into a life where nobody knew his name. If Elvis Presley really did stage his own death in the summer of 1977, he would have needed help from the people closest to him, the same people who loved him most. And if Nancy Rooks was right, then she spent 45 years protecting the secret of a man who trusted her enough to leave her behind. She never asked for credit. She never asked for money. She just kept ironing the pajamas of a ghost and waiting for the right moment to say what she knew. The question that remains is the one she could not answer herself. If he is still out there somewhere, living quietly under a different name in a small town no one would think to look, does he ever think about the house he left behind? Does he miss the sound of gospel music in the kitchen at 3 in the morning? And does he ever wonder about the woman who made his midnight sandwiches and never, not once in 45 years, said a word?